Hi everyone, welcome back to my abandoned family home renovation project. Sorry it's been a while since the last one. I've been very busy with the holidays and some other unexpected events, but progress has been continuing. I just haven't had as much time to edit the footage. And I forgot the cable for my wireless microphone, so hopefully the laptop mic is good enough, but I'll just overdub it later if it's not. But anyways, today we're going to be taking a look at the basement. I wanted to start down there. As far as the inside of the house is concerned, it was starting to get cold outside, and so I couldn't really get much more done on the exterior due to snow and whatnot. And with the basement being the way it is, having flooded so many times, there's definitely a considerable amount of mold down there. I wanted to kind of clean that up as quickly as possible. So, we're going to be taking a look at that today. It went very wrong in an unexpected way, but well, you'll see what happened. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's roll the footage. Well, alright. I'm going to be starting on the basement today, so first things first, we're going to do this little section here. This is just down the stairs facing the back of the house. Just going to get this cleaned up and organized a bit. If I grab my flashlight here, you can see the rest of the basement. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to actually get done today, but I'm going to see what I can do. If I have the time, I might try tearing down some of these wood structures and just opening up the space. But let's get to it. Let's see what we can do. So this first bit was pretty straightforward. There's just a lot of miscellaneous things piled around, and some of it was already pre-bagged up, but basically everything down here is just destroyed by all the water damage of the multiple floods over the years. But on the bright side, that meant it was all very easy to deal with. I kind of just set it aside so that I could haul it outside later. And there were a lot of metal pipes and things that I think are from the last plumbing break that I piled up against the wall under the stairs there. Something very strange that I noticed with the basement is that there's kind of a curb around some of the walls, and it's breaking apart. It's not really connected to the slab, and it's not connected to the walls. It looks like it was poured after, but I'm not sure what purpose it serves, and researching online, I couldn't really find any consensus on it. But I piled all the metal rods up on top of that curb, and that's where they're at. And as always, sweeping the floor after clearing an area is the most satisfying part, but my goodness does it kick up a lot of dust down here. Alright, so we got a little bit of headway here. I just swept a bunch, and I've been consolidating the junk into one spot, but I want to start moving around the corner into this direction so that we can maybe clear up some of this junk and actually make it walkable down here, but we'll see how that goes. So moving into the other corner, we start to run into a lot more of these wood structures. There's this big cabinet that was mounted on the main beam and this little metal post here. And I'm not really sure what the purpose of these metal struts are that are added here, because there's one on the opposite end as well. But just based on the overall size of the house and the layout of things, with the beam being set on the brick structure there shouldn't be need for additional support here. And so I think this was added later, but I'm not really sure why. And it makes me wonder if maybe the beam was sagging at some point, or if they added that upon converting to a duplex, maybe just to help hold up additional weight from extra walls. I'm not really sure. But anyway, a lot of the wooden structures down here, because they've molded so much over the years, the wood around the bottom is very, very soft, and usually it comes off pretty easily. And so I just took a pry bar and started wailing on everything, and for the most part I was able to pop things apart pretty consistently. Whereas anything that was in contact with the floor I could pretty much tear apart by hand because the wood was just so soft. But as you get higher up, closer to the ceiling down here, it's much more intact, and so the nails really want to hold on. And so it turned out to be certainly quite a job tearing all of this out. It wasn't super difficult, but it was definitely fighting me a little bit more than I thought that it was going to after everything I did in the garage. And sorry, some of the footage is weird because I was moving the light back and forth. I didn't really consider what that would look like on camera. But yeah, this shack is composed of a very, very small 2x4 frame. There's a handful of 2x4s, and then a lot of these siding panels, these half-inch boards that are about 6 inches wide. And so a majority of the siding, the smaller boards, they were pretty easy to deal with, but the 2x4s were much more secure, and so anything that was actually part of the structural frame of this thing was harder to get out of there. And so the progress on tearing this thing down kind of came in waves. I would get a lot of these smaller boards out really quickly and then struggle with some of the more entrenched pieces. And since I assumed that this whole thing would be very easy to just pry apart with a simple pry bar, I didn't bring any power tools. And so I probably could have done this whole thing twice as fast if I just brought along a Sawzall, but it still didn't take very long pulling everything out by hand. Now, the hardest part was just finding places that I could jam the pry bar in to actually get leverage and start pulling everything. It's such old construction that everything is just nailed in. There's no screws, and so for the most part, once you get leverage, you could pull these boards right off. It's just a matter of actually getting that leverage in the first place and figuring out all the weird ways that it's interconnected. Now with the shelf in here, I noticed that there was this small board that was connecting it with the beam, which immediately I figured was there for the sake of stopping it from tilting. And so once I pulled that off, I decided to just knock the thing over, figuring that it would probably fall apart once it hit the ground, and largely it did. This shelf was probably the softest wood in the entire pantry section over here, just because it was up against that wall, and so it's already, flooded out at the bottom, and any moisture that seeps through the wall is just going straight into this thing, and so it was very, very easy to take apart. I ended up just mostly kicking it to pieces once it was on the ground. The hardest part about all of this is seeing all of this good old-fashioned hardwood get wasted, knowing that it's essentially rotted out to a point where there's not really much I could do with it. It's not really going to be worth trying to salvage or repurpose any of this, but it's such high quality lumber. It's much more durable than the cheap builder grade stuff that a lot of these things are made out of today. And so I really wish that there was more I could do with it. But after so many years of sitting down here just rotting, I figure there's probably not much of this that's actually going to be able to be repurposed or salvaged in any way. And most of the difficulty of this step was really just figuring out where to put all this scrap wood after tearing it down and disassembling the structures, because obviously now that I'm working indoors, I've got a little bit less leeway to just throw things in giant piles and whatnot, and I'm gonna have to start carting all this stuff out and figuring out where to put it. But it was very, very satisfying to tear all this down and open up the space and pull out all these unnecessary walls. Essentially, they had this place set up so that there were multiple pantries, multiple little storage units down here, but I've always preferred more of an open basement. I like a good utility space, but for utility space, I like it to have a little bit more openness where I can see everything that I'm working with. I'm not really sure what I would do with 3 separate storage units in the basement. I would much rather just have it be one big continuous space. And so yeah, once I got a lot of the structure down, a lot of these wall panels kind of came down in big sheets, which made them a lot easier to deal with. And the final wall over there was actually built into the bathroom unit, the builder toilet, I guess you would call it. And so I left that one up temporarily. Well, you guys know how it is. The only way to clean a mess is to first make an even bigger mess. And so here's where we're at. We've got our garbage corner over here, which is very, very rapidly filling up. I'm just kind of throwing junk underneath the stairs for the time being until I can get it all packed up outside and shipped off. Having torn out that entire storage area down here, it's starting to look a little bit nicer. Albeit, don't turn the corner, because lo and behold, there it all is. And getting that hauled up the stairs and thrown out of here is going to be a task unto itself, but, well, at least it's no longer standing around rotting as it was. And now we've got a lovely little corner of basement here. And I'm pretty happy with that so far. Good to see that the slab down here is still in pretty good shape. The walls are a bit worse than I was hoping they would be over in this corner in particular. This is where the water really builds up the worst outside, so I'm going to have to address that from the outside. It's just a lot of gutter work and whatnot that needs to be done out there, but still no major cracks in the foundation or anything like that, so I think we're in pretty good shape, all things considered. But yeah, still got this little shack here. And this is our basement half bath, which is completely full of spider webs, so I'm gonna try not to go in there, but it is awfully convenient having a restroom in the basement, and since all the plumbing is already here, all I gotta do is tear this toilet out, get a good one in there, and, you know, maybe like a sink. Is there a... No sink in there? We could attach a sink. Sinks are really easy. And as far as I can tell, there's some kind of drain over there, because there's a shower down here, so we could definitely rig some kind of sink situation together. Oh yeah, there's our new basement space, and now we've unlocked a lot more room down here. I kind of roughhoused a bit with all of the beams and the ventilation and whatnot. Definitely banged a few things a bit loose, but since I'm expecting to have to replace all this anyway, I don't really feel too bad if I give it a smack or two, because odds are that the ventilation is probably full of mold, same as everything else down here, and it's not the type of thing you really want to take a chance on. It's simpler just to tear it out and replace it, and so I'm not too bothered if I have to knock all this down and reroute it again, because it gives me an opportunity to do it a little bit better and a little bit neater anyway. A lot of weird things going on with the electrical as well, I've noticed. Every time I find one of these conduits, they're always in a strange state, so I'm not sure what's up with that. But one other thing I gotta say is this little space heater actually turned out to be surprisingly good. It was just a cheap little Mr. Heater. Picked it up at Home Depot on the way here, but it just runs off little propane tanks, and I've been running it for a couple hours, and it's still cold in here. I can still see my breath, but I don't really feel cold anymore. Even with my gloves off, my hands aren't freezing anymore, so I think we got the ambient temperature just from this little unit probably up to like 40 degrees almost. It's not that bad, so very impressed with that, considering it's only rated for 200 square feet, and this basement's definitely bigger than that. But anyways, that's going to be it for today. We're losing sunlight, and that means it's time for me to head home. This is definitely going to be a multi-day project, this basement, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with all the debris just yet, but, well, we got plenty of time to figure that out some other day. So I'm going to go ahead and pack up and get out of here. Well, alright guys, it's day 2 in the basement, and I'm just setting up shop here, getting ready to go at this all again. Took some of the garbage bags out of the corner here, so that's good to see at least a little bit of that stuff moving. I was hoping to create a lane out the back door, so I wouldn't have to go in and out this side door, so I could maybe haul some of this wood outside just so that it's out of the way, but I restacked the kitchen a little bit. It's all the same stuff in here, it's just been rearranged, so now all the chairs are there. But what I found out was that the back door doesn't actually open. So this little mudroom here, this is not over the foundation, it's just over the back porch essentially, and so it isn't necessarily as level as the rest of it, and it seems like it's settled some. You can actually see the door has dropped quite a bit, and so it's really hard to get this door to open. Even pushing with all my might against it, it's just the whole thing is so unlevel. I couldn't get it all the way open, and so in terms of moving things in and out through the back door, I don't think that's really going to be viable right now until that gets fixed. So that's unfortunate. I was hoping to take all the scrap wood and haul it out into the back lot today, but I think I'll save that. We'll just pile it up kind of out of the way for now, but yeah, that's where we're at. Anyways, more basement cleaning awaits, so let me get everything set up and we'll get to it.
So now it was time to work on the front pantry, the one at the base of the stairs, and immediately I bumped into this door and it just fell off the hinges, so that one was pretty easy to remove. And as for the rest of the structure, it was quite similar to the last, but this one actually ended up being a little bit easier to tear down just because there was more space. And so without it being crammed in the corner and up against the main beam of the house, I had a little bit more wiggle room with a lot of these pieces. I wasn't constantly bumping into ductwork and whatnot. The major difference with this set down here is that it had these shelves that were built into the shack walls, and so it was a little bit more of a task to separate everything because it was slightly sturdier constructed as a result of that. So there were just more nails to separate, more joints to disconnect and whatnot. And a few of the boards actually had things running through them. So this first one here, there's a cable running through it, and then there's another one with a pipe running through it. And so I had to go out and grab my hacksaw and just chop the wood until I could break it apart to get those out of there, because they had just drilled through it and then ran the utilities through the walls, and so disconnecting is a little bit harder as a result. And the shelving in here is actually constructed in a very interesting way. It seemed like it was made out of siding or something, just this really thin board, and It was built in a really interesting fashion. It was like a wood shop project or something. It's just not the way you would ordinarily construct a shelf of any kind. But the upside was that meant it was very, very easy to dismantle because it was just not well made. And this water heater was one of the older water heaters that it had been in the basement ever since we lived in the house, and just kind of lying on the floor in that pantry, and so now it's time to deal with it. And the ironing board down here, I also don't know the origin of. I think it's just another thing that was just kind of always there. I do think it's also a little interesting how you can tell by the silhouette of the paint on the wall that there was probably a cabinet in this storage unit, just like in the other one, that must have been taken down and removed at some point, because you could see where it was painted around, and that's roughly the size that cabinet would have been, so there had to have been something like that in there, and I guess they replaced it with those very flimsy shelves that had been there. But yeah, when we lived in this house, we didn't really use the basement for much, because it was a little bit damp down there, but also just had all these structures and things, and there was a lot of miscellaneous stuff stored in there from my uncle, and so we never really got a lot of use out of the basement, other than to do laundry and things like that. But as an adult, I've always been a big fan of the basement rec room, or using it for recreation space or utility space or some combination of both. And so opening up this space, I just can't see anything but a lot of potential for what could go down here. Obviously, it's going to need a lot of work, a lot of finishing and cleaning up and whatnot, but very much looking forward to what might be.
Alright, so interesting situation. I got that shack all torn out, and then there's just that little workbench that was on the other side of it, but that thing is like, it's barely standing. If I just kick it too hard, it'll fall over and collapse into pieces. Yeah, I got the shack pieces all onto a giant pile right there, and here's my little workstation, as it were. But found something I wasn't expecting, which is a hole that leads out to underneath the front porch, and you can see that right there. That's under the porch there that you're looking at. So yeah, it's just kind of an open hole. There was a bunch of like random wood and metal shoved in there, like someone was trying to block it up, but I don't know what they were getting at with that. But I'll have to see if I can shove something on there, maybe like some spray foam or something, just to kind of close that up, because that front porch is not sealed at all, so like you get like rats and stuff come right through there. So, anyway, the next objective is to move in that direction towards the opposite corner. Seeing as how I got so much wood scrap now, I really need to start deciding what I want to do with it, but I think temporarily. So here's the base of the stairs, and here's that front wall we've just cleared up. I think I'm going to keep that little kicker there, and probably pile a lot of wood up on this front wall here, just as a kind of a place to store it until I can find somewhere to put it out back, and that way it'll just, not be blocking the pathways or anything as it is right now. So still got a lot of work to do, but the progress is happening pretty quickly. So anyway, I need to get my respirator back on. Let's get back to it.
So this big box here is kind of like a workbench, kind of like a storage bench, I don't know, but there's these 3 channels at the bottom of it that are just full of old pipe fittings that are just old metal pipe, and so it's all been extremely rusted out because the basement had flooded so many times, and so none of it's useful, but it's just a giant pile of rusty metal in the bottom of that. As for the thing itself, the cabinet itself, it mostly came apart in big pieces, and so that was very, very convenient. I did find, though, that one of the base plates at the back end of it was actually nailed into the floor, which is interesting because I'm not really sure how you nail through concrete like that, but that's what they had done. So. And I decided to roll over my trusty shopping cart, which I still don't know the origin of. I want to say it was in the basement when we moved in. I think it's been there for a long time, but yeah, I don't know how it ended up getting there. But I basically just took up all the scrap metal that was on the ground and piled it up in that cart just to kind of get it out of my way. And then I started working on this other little shack. Now, this one was a later construction. I don't know when this was added on, but you could tell just by the type of wood that was used that it was much later than the other pantries. The first 2, I'm not sure if they're original to the house or not, but they're definitely much older, whereas this probably would have been added somewhere near the turning of the millennium. I would assume the old pantries were original, and this was added during the duplex conversion. That's my only guess. But most of the wall segments were actually just really, really cheap particle board, and so it was pretty easy to dismantle. It's mostly just made out of cheaper 2x4s and particle board. But what I didn't realize at the time was that this construction had been made around the water main in such a way that it was kind of holding it in place. And the pipe shifted slightly when I removed all of this, which I didn't even notice at the time. And even looking at the footage, it's barely changed. It just shows that it was kind of being held in place a little bit by this shack. And so when I finally got all the walls down and I went to pick up the floor, this happened. I very lightly tapped the ball valve on the water main, and I noticed immediately that it started leaking a little bit. Just a little bit, just a mist, but I could hear it. And so this is when I stopped and took a look at it and saw that it was spraying out small amounts of water. And so I thought that maybe the pipe was sagging, maybe it needed to be propped up, because when I straightened it out, the leak got better. So I figured if I got it to the right position, it would hopefully stop leaking. So I grabbed a board from one of the shacks, chopped it down a little bit with my hacksaw, and attempted to jam it under there to hold everything in place and hopefully stop the water from spraying out. And I was very caught off guard by this, but my first thought was, well, maybe I could just connect it back together. What if I just shove it back in there? Yeah, no, that didn't work. So there are two ball valves connected together that are connecting the water main to the water meter. And the first one in the sequence had somehow cracked to a point where the threaded section of it was just completely broken open. It was not going to be possible to reconnect it to the main. And that's why the pipe popped out of there. Now, in this moment, I really didn't know what to do, but my thought was, I'll just go get a cap and cap the water main so that it stops spraying out water and doesn't flood the basement. You see, I can't turn it off at the street because it actually is a shared main with my uncle's house next door. They have the same shutoff valve, and so you can't turn off one without turning off the other. And I wasn't sure exactly where that shutoff was anyway, so I figured I would just solve this problem internally. And thus began a series of misadventures.
Alright, huge problem, major disaster. I gotta go fast here, but the shutoff that they attached to the water main, it broke. Smacked it with a board and it just broke, so I don't think it was installed very well, but I need to run to the hardware store so I can solve this right away. This is a big problem. I don't need this right now. Guess the basement's flooded for a fourth time. Alright. Made the emergency run to Home Depot. I hope I got the right size pipe fitting. I think I can fix this though. We gotta move quickly though. That's really bad. Let's see what we can do.
So the trouble with water mains is that they're pressurized. And the trouble with the pressure is there's a lot of it. So sure, you can thread Teflon tape around the pipe, and you could take a cap and try to connect it to the pipe, but that doesn't mean it's gonna work. You really want the water to not be flowing in order to make this type of connection. I found that out the hard way. My assumption was just that if I pushed hard enough, I would be able to get the cap to thread, and even despite the pressure, I would be able to twist it into place and stop this from happening. But yeah, it really doesn't work that way. And so instead, I got a shower in cold water in a 20-degree basement. This was not one of my finer moments, and this was not a very good day. I must say I'm very thankful that I had eye protection just for the mold, because it helped with attempting to cram this pipe back on there since I was getting blasted in the eyes with water, and so I put these eye pro on, and that allowed me to keep on working. It didn't help me get the pipe fitting on, though.
Okay, I had the wrong size fitting. I had to go get another one, so we gotta get this coupling back on, and then I'm gonna put a 1 1/4 cap on the end of it. See if we can make it happen. When I hands breathe. Really wish this hadn't happened in the dead of winter.
The fun part was I was kind of panicking at this point. There's water pouring into the basement, and thankfully the basement drain was taking all of it. I mean, there was no real threat of flooding here. That wasn't going to happen because the drain was not clogged or anything. The water's just flowing across the basement and into the drain on the other side. But because I was in such a frenzy trying to fix this thing, essentially my adrenaline was high enough that after a while the cold kind of stopped mattering. So even though I was wearing a soaked pair of jeans and I'm getting sprayed constantly with this cold water, after a while I couldn't even feel it anymore. It didn't really bother me. But eventually I did kind of figure out what my mistake was and how to actually solve this problem.
Alright everyone, hardware store trip number 3 down, and now I've got a shutoff valve. I guess it was a little overly optimistic to think that I could just force a cap onto there, but no, the sheer amount of pressure, you just can't get it to thread. So I'm gonna have to let the water pass through this ball valve while I screw it on there and then pull the thing closed. This ought to be the final hurrah. And hopefully, since I'm doing it right this time, I won't have to get sprayed in the face with water. Learned a very stupid lesson today. A rather cold one at that. Well, I don't think it'll come across on camera, but there's still a kind of a micro leak in it. It's spraying a little bit of water out here, so I'm probably going to take this back off and redo the Teflon tape on that connector. I don't know how it wasn't enough. I wrapped it so much, but it's good to know that it'll work though when I actually get it sorted. Holy crap, I'm cold. I'm gonna warm up a bit and then I'll fix that, but crisis averted for now. Alright, I got it. I just I hit it with all the Teflon tape in the world. God, what a nightmare. This is not how I was planning on spending my day today. Post-mortem, I don't know if I can get an angle on it, but it's completely cracked open. So it just wasn't that tight of a connection, I suppose, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm freezing, my batteries are dying, and I think it's time to call this one a day for now. We'll figure this out next time.
Alright everyone, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, please like the video and definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I've got a lot more work ahead of me, and so there should be much more to come. And if you've got any tips or suggestions, you could definitely leave those in the comments. I will need all the help I can get. And since we're recording after the fact, I'm pleased to report that my sloppy patch job on the water main did actually hold. I didn't have any further problems with flooding or leaking or anything, so that's at least one plus. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one.